All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. Ford just announced basically that they're going to become Tesla. Now, that may be a little hyperbole. I'm kind of taking that out of context. Not out of context, but they didn't quite say that. But all of the things that they talk about kind of point to that they're trying to evolve a little bit here, and I think that's the underlying tone that I got from reading all of this. So I just read the Ford memos about what is going on and their new somewhat direction. They don't say that it's a company direction, but their new, the universal EV is what they're calling it, and it seems to be bigger than they're kind of letting it on to be. Now, let me explain all this so you guys don't have to go read and deal with all this weeding through yourself. Now, we know Ford they've dipped their feet in the EV with lackluster results. The Mach-E is kind of like it's not a great EV when you look at them with comparatively. That's the thing about EVs, is because they are appliances more than they are like cars that give you like a visceral feeling and like there's emotions behind them. There's not really that with EVs, so you look at them objectively compared to what else is in the same price point. Like if you're just looking on performance metrics, it's just not as good as a Tesla for the same price or other EVs for that same price. So and that's kind of the crutch of EVs that a lot of people don't talk about, is you look at them differently because they're so on the same playing field. You know, there's not like, oh, well, I like the sound of this one better, this one just feels better, the transmission shifts. It doesn't really have all that. They're all pretty similar, so you just basically buy it based off of tech, reliability, price, and then if the stats are better. There's no other real benefit that you're looking at, in my opinion. So you just buy the best one, which seems to be a Tesla right now. We don't get the Chinese ones, so until we get a BYD or what's the other ones? They're crazy Chinese names, the Zumo, whatever they call it. Until we get things like that, we look at what you get. The Cadillac stuff is actually selling really well right now. Pretty decent. I don't know the full... I can't tell you every EVs and the differences and stuff, but I do know which ones seem to be good and which ones don't. It's pretty simple. I think we all do, based on just what you see in the wild and who's been doing it longer. Now, the whole thing about this video. Ford just unveiled their new Ford, they call it the Universal EV. Now, we've seen other companies do this. It's like a skateboard that they can put whatever they want on top of it. Rivian has done that to, lackluster. It's been tough for Rivian because they lose about $30,000 every vehicle they produce because they're a startup. One would imagine that Ford can do it a little better, as they are not a startup. They've been building cars for 100 plus years. But they just invested $5 billion to create this new platform. And now they're underplaying it, I think, because it's the universal EV platform that when they show the pictures and when they talk about it, they're talking about it's going to have a truck on it, it's going to have a sedan, it's going to have an SUV, it's going to have a van, and anything in between. That's what it says. So to me, that immediately sounds like that's their whole lineup. I mean, besides like the full-size trucks and some bigger SUVs, this is like their bread and butter, right? They're going to replace the Mach-E. They're going to probably replace the Mustang. They're going to replace the Ford Lightning. They're going to replace the Maverick, the Ranger, the vans that they have, the Transits. They're going to replace them all with this same exact platform because there's a lot of positives to that. Even when they say the platform reduces parts by 20%. It reduces parts by 20% versus the typical vehicle, with 25% fewer fasteners, 40% fewer workstations dock to dock, and the assembly plant it moves 15% faster. So they can make cars cheaper, faster, and with less hardware and just less moving parts. That's because they're doing a lot of what Tesla does and what Rivian does, and they're doing the large pieces. Like, they're going to try for the very just like single piece aluminum. But then that brings that drawback of if you get into like a fender bender with your car, it's totaled because the whole thing's just one piece, which will have clear implications on the right to repair guys that are pushing for, this stuff to all be very repairable. What are you going to do? If a Rivian gets backed into and like the quarter panel is like dented, it's like a $30,000 repair because the whole thing is like this one piece aluminum unibody. Ford's talking about the same thing essentially. Has some problems, but it will get to their goal of cheap vehicles. Now, they are trying for cheap $30,000 vehicles. That's what they say. They said, adjusted for inflation, the Model T is $30,000 in today's money, so they want a $30,000 vehicle that they can sell to their consumers. And we've heard this a million times. We just heard it from the Slate, that the Slate will be $27,000 before EV tax credits, which are gone, and Ford knows that. Those aren't going to be a thing anymore, but I was critical of the Slate to actually bring something like this to market, and it looks like Ford is actually going to do that, which is pretty entertaining. Who do you think will come to market first? They're just trying to unify it all. Now, that's where I see Tesla. Tesla has the X, the 3, the Y, and they even have, what do they have? Another one? The X, the 3, the Y, and they're talking about like the cab that all looks the same. The Cybertruck, yes, looks very different. But for the most part, their lineup looks the same, and the platforms are pretty similar. Not quite like this, like a skateboard, but similar enough, I think. So that's where you kind of end up in the same situation that Ford's going to be in, and that's where I think that they're going for, is these cheap, stamped, mass production vehicles. And by the sounds of it, this is going to take up a lot of their lineup. I mean, what use are they going to have for the Maverick if they have this electric truck? Are they going to really have the Ranger, the Maverick, the F-150, the Lightning, and an F-250? Are they going to have 5, 6 trucks? Probably not. They're going to cut the platforms by a lot. They said that these will be coming out in 2027. They said that they're going to be faster than a Mustang EcoBoost in your truck. Cool. I mean, it's not really a high benchmark, but for $30,000, that's a pretty good deal. These are what we would start to call disposable cars, I think. And now $30,000 sounds insane as disposable, but it's what the automakers are pushing towards. You see it across the board when cars get, like, I've heard that with Kia for the longest time. They're disposable. You don't even repair them, you just get a new one. I think that's kind of the same thing here. It's a very interesting situation we're going to. I even like some of Jim Farley's quotes here. So he says, we took a radical approach to a very hard challenge. Create affordable vehicles that delight customers in every way that matter. Design, innovation, flexibility, space, driving, pleasure, and cost of ownership, and do it with American workers. That's what Jim Farley said. Very enticing to a lot of people. Maybe not the Ford purists, like the guys that like performance cars, but to a lot of people. We have all lived through far too many good college tries by Detroit automakers to make affordable vehicles that ends up with idled plants, layoffs, and uncertainty. So this had to be a strong, sustainable, and profitable business from day one. They are basically saying that they are, I don't want to say pivoting, but they are definitely leaning deep into this idea, it sounds like. This quote even kind of threw me off a little bit too. We improve over time with over-the-air updates. So like the cars they're going to sell them to you, but then they're going to make them better as you own it, which is always like a kind of a frustrating thing to hear. It's like, I want the car the way that it's supposed to be. Like, finish the car before I buy it. It's like buying a video game, and it's like, well, you can buy the new maps. Like, things will load eventually. Just have to wait. And it's like, well, what? I want the full thing. Why did I wait till 2027 if you're not going to give me a full car? What do you guys think? Is that is that unreasonable to think that they should come finished? There is some plus side to this, though, in my opinion. Parts being interchangeable is always convenient. Ford's been pretty known for that in the 90s and 2000s of their parts being very interchangeable. If their whole platform is pretty much the same car, that sounds pretty nice and simple, easy to work on. You learn them pretty easily because it's 5 different chassis, 5 different cars, same chassis. Could be very simple. Same suspension. So if they get it right, that's a great, green flag for the consumers. But if they get it slightly wrong, that means that the entire platform is wrong. And the entire range of their lineup is gotten wrong. So there's a lot of pressure to get it right because this is what the consumer is going to be buying across your platform. If you don't get it right, it's really going to screw them up. Which obviously I'm sure it's a huge gamble for them and they know that, but they're really just developing the one platform. So maybe it's not as much of a gamble, but they're also building a big strategy around this. So I don't know, it seems questionable. Another good point that the EV chief, Doug Field, said, he said, I don't think new EV startups will keep up because of their size and manufacturing background and the ability for them to do things like this. They invested $5 billion and created 4,000 new jobs for this exact thing in Louisville. They're going to be making them in the U.S. with U.S. workers. So that will be a huge benefit to them, obviously. And like he said, I don't think any new EV companies can start up. This is the kind of thing that will really damage a company like Rivian if they can't build of the same quality. If they can't build a car that justifies the extra cost, I mean, you already know Rivians are in the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. If these really come out at $30,000 and they're close enough to a Rivian, they're cooked. I mean, how can they possibly compete with that? They've already been hemorrhaging money. Most of the EV companies are struggling or dying besides Tesla. And even right now, the EV market kind of sucks in the US. The Mach-E sales, the inventory's piling up. The Chevy Traxxas or whatever, which one's the Blazer EV is kind of meh. It doesn't really have anything around it. It's just a car. The Mustang Mach-E, yes, it's outselling the regular Mustangs, but it's not really flying off the shelves anymore. And yeah, it's old and it's a decaying platform at this point, but still, it's an interesting time. And that's probably why when Ford announced this morning, their stock immediately dropped. It immediately took a nosedive on the back of this, probably because of the EV fear, I would think. There's not a whole lot of confidence in American EV manufacturers at the moment besides Tesla. I think they're all playing a game that they're not really prepared to win. But that's all just me speculating and thinking and what I see, what's out there, and more consumer. No matter how good they make them, well, that's probably not true. But consumers aren't very open to EVs. A lot of consumers. There's still so much educating and so much change that needs to be done to get the American consumer into EVs. But, they make a play like this, and 8 years down the line, things will be way different and consumer habits will be way different. It's a whole new generation of people that didn't grow up on the same nostalgia that we all did. So this could be the perfect play. And one of the quotes here that I found interesting, he said, "We empowered a tiny Skunk Works team 3 time zones away from Detroit and redesigned the assembly line, redesigned their cars." Like I said, very strong pivot feel. Even the whole press release is about how they changed their whole assembly line. Again, went very Tesla, where it's a tree assembly line, where, stations are easy to interchange, is really what it comes down to. And different cars can go down the same assembly line and get different things. It's a very interesting system, and it'll be very interesting to see how this works out for Ford. But like I said, do you guys think this is a pivot, or do you think that this is just adding to their lineup? They don't have a sedan right now. The Mustang is obviously also aging a little bit and low sales, so they need to change something. They don't even have, like, their small SUVs are pretty outdated at this point. Where are they sitting at in their, what are their SUVs and cars right now? Like, they have the Escape, the Bronco Sport, the Explorer, and the Mach-E, and the Expedition. So this can presumably replace the Bronco Sport, the Escape, the Mach-E, and potentially the Mustang with an EV Mustang. I don't think that's what Ford wants to do, but this can replace plenty of their cars. And then obviously their transit, their commercial vehicles, and then of course their Mach-E. The Lightning, I think, was already out on its way out, and then the Maverick can also be replaced by this. So what do you guys think? Are you excited that Ford's going to have like the same lineup? Or is this just something new that they're adding and they'll leave all this same stuff? I don't know. We'll see how it works out for them. Thank you guys so much for watching, listening to me ramble about this stuff. Hopefully you could follow my insane man thought process. I like to just rant about things, but it'll be interesting to see. I'm always keeping my ear to the ground on everything in the automotive world. The race for the cheapest platform possible. That's what it all comes down to. Who can make the cheapest platform? Because all of these companies just want to compete with used cars, it seems like, in the end of the day. That's what their competition is. At $30,000, your competition is every used car in the world. We'll see how it works out.